the cowboy said. "She already has someone waiting." 2 men tried to claim her at the depot. The afternoon train arrived later than usual, rolling into the small town with a long, tired whistle that echoed across the open fields. Dust lifted from the tracks and moved through the warm air. The depot had always been the center of the town's quiet life. People came there not only to travel, but to watch, to wonder, and sometimes to wait. On that day, more people had gathered than normal. News had spread quickly that someone important was arriving. No one said it loudly, but many knew her name, Clara Whitmore. Some remembered her as the bright girl who used to run across the wooden platform with her hair loose in the wind. Others remembered the day she left without much explanation. It had been 3 long years since anyone had seen her. The train doors opened slowly, one by one. A few travelers stepped down first. An elderly couple, a man with crates, a woman holding a baby. Then, after a small pause, Clara appeared. She stepped down carefully, holding a single brown suitcase. She looked thinner than before, her face more serious, but her eyes were steady. She wore a simple blue dress, not expensive but neat. Her shoes were dusty from travel. She paused for just a moment after touching the platform, as if she needed to feel the ground beneath her again. A soft whisper moved through the crowd. "She's back." Clara looked around the depot. The old wooden benches were still there. The same clock hung above the office window. Even the paint on the walls was still slightly chipped. Everything looked smaller than she remembered, but the town had not forgotten her. Before she could take more than a few steps, a voice called her name, Clara. Daniel Harper stood near the ticket window. He was dressed in a clean dark coat, his boots polished. His hair was neatly combed, and confidence seemed to rest naturally on his shoulders. He gave a small smile, as if he had expected this moment for a long time. "You made it," he said, stepping forward. "Daniel." Before she could say more, another voice came from the other side of the platform. "Clara, you're finally home." Marcus Reed moved through the crowd. He wore work clothes, his sleeves rolled up, his hands rough from labor. His face carried nervous hope, the kind that had been building for years. The crowd felt the tension immediately. Daniel stopped walking when he saw Marcus approach. Marcus slowed when he noticed Daniel already standing near her. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Daniel cleared his throat. "I've been waiting for you. I received your letters." Marcus shook his head quickly. "No, she wrote to me. She said she would come back." Clara looked between them, confusion forming on her face. "What letters?" "The ones you sent from the city. You said things would be different when you returned." Marcus stepped closer. "You promised you would explain everything when you got back. I've been here every month when the train arrived." The air grew heavy. Townspeople leaned in, pretending not to stare but listening carefully. Clara tightened her grip on her suitcase. "I never promised." "You don't have to pretend," Daniel interrupted gently but firmly. "We talked about leaving." "And we talked about staying," Marcus added, his voice rising slightly. The argument was not loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the warm afternoon air. Clara felt her chest tighten. She had just arrived, and already she was standing in the middle of something she did not expect. She took a slow breath. "I wrote letters to both of you, but not promises." Daniel's expression changed. What do you mean?" Before she could answer, a slow, steady voice came from behind them. "She already has someone waiting." The words were calm but strong enough to stop the argument instantly. Everyone turned. Leaning against one of the wooden support posts stood Elijah Cole. Most people simply called him the Cowboy. He was older than Daniel and Marcus, his hat low over his eyes, his boots dusty from long days of riding across open land. He rarely spoke unless it mattered. Now he pushed himself off the post and stepped forward. Daniel looked confused. What does that mean?" He studied Clara for a quiet moment as if checking something only he understood. Clara met his gaze, and something in her expression softened. Marcus shifted uneasily. "If you know something, say it." Elijah tipped his hat slightly, but kept his eyes steady. "You boys are arguing like she's a package that came in on that train." A few people in the crowd nodded quietly. Daniel straightened. "That's not what this is." "No?" Elijah asked calmly. Clara felt her face grow warm. She did not like being spoken about as if she were not standing there. "I didn't come back for this," she said quietly. Her voice was not loud, but it carried weight. The men fell silent. Clara looked at Daniel first. She remembered the boy who used to talk about city lights and big plans. He had always believed he was meant for something greater. He once asked her to imagine leaving town together, chasing a larger world. Then she looked at Marcus. She remembered the afternoons he spent helping her father fix broken fences. He had been steady, patient, rarely speaking about dreams, but always showing up when needed, but neither truly knew her present. Daniel tried again, softer this time. Clara, I thought we understood each other. Marcus nodded. I believed you would come back for me. Clara swallowed. I left because my family needed, not because I chose one of you. The crowd grew quieter. Elijah stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. Maybe, he said slowly, you both heard what you wanted to hear. Daniel looked away first. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. The train conductor called out that the train would depart soon. The sharp sound of metal against metal reminded everyone that time does not stop for misunderstandings. Clara adjusted her suitcase and looked around at the town once more. The wind lifted a small piece of paper near the tracks. The sun was beginning to lower, casting long shadows across the platform. I'm tired, she said honestly. I've been traveling for 2 days. Daniel stepped forward quickly. I can take you to the hotel. You can stay at my place. My sister has a spare room. Again, tension sparked. Clara raised her hand gently. Please. Both men stopped. I can manage, she said. I have learned how. Those words were simple, but they carried strength neither man had expected. Elijah watched quietly, a small thoughtful look on his face. The train began to move again, slowly pulling away from the station. Its whistle echoed once more, then faded into the distance. Clara stood in the middle of the depot, the town she once knew now feeling unfamiliar. 2 men stood on either side of her, each carrying years of hope, and the cowboy stood just a few steps away, as if guarding something invisible. No one fully understood what he meant by his earlier words. She already has someone waiting. But the way he said it made it clear this story was not as simple as either man believed. Clara lifted her suitcase and took her first step forward into town. And though the argument had paused, everyone sensed it was only the beginning. 3 years earlier, the town had looked very different to Clara. Back then, she had not walked with such careful steps. She used to move quickly, almost like the wind itself carried her from one place to another. The depot had been a place of dreams, not tension. It was where she and her friends would sit on the wooden benches and talk about the future as if it were something simple and easy to reach. Daniel Harper had always been the loudest dreamer among them. Even as a teenager, he spoke about the world beyond the town's dirt roads. He talked about tall buildings, busy streets, and opportunities that waited for people who were brave enough to leave. He would lean back against the depot wall, smiling confidently, and say, "One day, I won't just watch the trains. I'll be on one of them, heading somewhere bigger." Clara used to listen carefully when he spoke. There was something exciting about the way he described life outside their small town. He made it sound bright and full of movement. Sometimes when he talked long enough, she could almost see it in her mind. The lights, the crowds, the noise. Daniel had a way of making people believe in his plans. Marcus Reed was different. He rarely interrupted Daniel's speeches, but he never fully agreed either. Marcus preferred the quiet fields outside town. He liked fixing fences, helping neighbors repair broken roofs, and working with his hands. He did not talk much about leaving. If someone asked him about the future, he would shrug and say, "There's enough right here to keep a person busy." Clara found comfort in Marcus's steadiness. When her father's tools broke, Marcus would fix them. When the wind damaged their fence, Marcus would show up without being asked. He did not make big promises. He simply stayed. For a long time, Clara did not realize she was standing between 2 very different paths. With Daniel, she felt pulled toward adventure. With Marcus, she felt safe and understood. She never wanted to hurt either of them, so she tried to keep things balanced. She spent afternoons listening to Daniel's plans and evenings walking quietly with Marcus along the edge of the fields. Then, life changed faster than anyone expected. Clara's father fell seriously ill during the winter. The cold months were already hard for the family. Work became difficult, and medical bills began to grow. Clara's mother tried to remain strong, but worry showed in her tired eyes. The small shop her father owned near the depot struggled to stay open. He spoke about finding better doctors in the city, about raising money once he left town and became successful. He meant well, but his ideas always seemed far away from the immediate problem. Marcus did not speak much. Instead, he started working longer hours to help Clara's family. He delivered supplies, repaired shelves in the shop, and made sure Clara's mother did not carry heavy boxes alone. Clara felt grateful to both of them in different ways. But gratitude and love are not always the same thing, and at that time, Clara herself did not understand her own heart. One evening, as snow fell lightly outside, Daniel met Clara at the depot. His face was serious, more serious than she had ever seen it before. "I'm leaving in the spring," he told her. She looked at him, surprised. "So soon?" "I can't wait any longer," he said. "There's nothing here for me. I need to start building something real." "And what about us?" she asked quietly. Daniel hesitated only a second. "Come with me when you're ready. Once I settle there, I'll send for you. We don't belong here forever." His words sounded certain, almost too certain. Clara wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that life could be that simple. Leave, succeed, return for the one you care about. But her father was still weak. Her family needed her. "I can't leave right now," she said softly. Daniel nodded, but a shadow crossed his face. "I understand. Just don't wait too long." That conversation stayed with her long after he boarded his train months later. The day he left, he hugged her tightly and whispered, "You'll see. I'll make something of myself. Then everything will fall into place." Marcus watched that farewell from a distance. He did not approach Clara that day, but later when she sat alone near the fence behind her house, he walked over quietly. "You don't have to leave to matter," he told her. She looked up at him, her eyes tired. "Everyone keeps saying that staying means settling." Marcus shook his head. "Staying can mean building something strong." His words were simple, but they reached her in a different way than Daniel's promises had. With Marcus, there was no grand picture of the future. There was only the present moment and the effort put into it. As the months passed, Clara's father's health grew worse. The shop began to close more often. Bills stacked up. One night, after a long discussion with her mother, Clara made a difficult decision. She would leave town, not to follow Daniel and not to choose Marcus, but to work in the city herself. A distant relative had offered her a job in a small boarding house. It was not glamorous, but it would pay enough to send money home.
She wrote letters before she left.
To Daniel, she wrote that she hoped he was finding success. She told him she was also coming to the city, but not for romance or reunion. She needed to stand on her own feet first. She wrote clearly that she could not make promises about the future until she understood her own path. To Marcus, she wrote with equal honesty. She thanked him for his constant support and kindness. She explained that she cared deeply for him but could not promise to return unchanged. She needed time to grow, to learn who she was outside of the town's expectations. She left those letters at the depot office the morning she boarded her train. The station clerk promised they would be delivered. As the train pulled away, Clara felt fear and hope mixed together. She was not running toward either man. She was running toward responsibility. Life in the city was not what Daniel had once described. It was loud, crowded, and exhausting. Clara worked long hours cleaning rooms and helping guests. She learned to manage money carefully. She learned how to speak firmly when needed. She learned that independence was not a beautiful dream, but a daily effort. Sometimes she thought of Daniel. She heard from others that he was trying different business ideas. Sometimes she wondered if he believed she had come for him. Sometimes she thought of Marcus. She pictured him fixing fences under the hot sun. She wondered if he was angry that she left. Months turned into years. Clara sent money home regularly. After her father passed away peacefully one spring morning, she nearly returned immediately. But her mother encouraged her to stay a little longer and save enough to secure the shop's future. During those years, Clara wrote fewer letters. Work consumed her time. She assumed that if either man truly wanted clarity, they would write directly to her. But misunderstandings quietly grew. Daniel heard that Clara was in the city and believed it confirmed his assumption that she had followed his path because of him. Marcus heard from others that she planned to return someday and believed she would come back for him once her duties were done. Neither man had seen the full truth of her struggle. Neither had read her words with complete understanding. And so, by the time Clara finally decided to return home 3 years later, each man carried his own version of the story. Daniel believed she was coming back to stand beside him. Marcus believed she was coming back to choose him. Neither realized that Clara had left to choose herself first. The platform at the depot remained unusually quiet after Clara's arrival. Even the usual chatter of townspeople seemed softer, as if everyone sensed that something important was about to unfold. The wind moved gently across the wooden boards, lifting small pieces of dust into the air. Clara stood still, her suitcase resting beside her feet, while Daniel and Marcus remained on opposite sides of her. The earlier confidence in their voices had faded, replaced by uncertainty. The townspeople pretended to return to their normal business, but their eyes stayed fixed on the small group. Elijah, the cowboy, stepped forward slowly. He did not rush his movements. He never did. His boots made steady sounds against the wooden platform. His hat shaded his face, but his eyes were sharp and thoughtful. Daniel was the first to break the silence. "You said she already has someone waiting," he repeated. "What did you mean? If you know something about those letters, you should say it." Elijah looked at Clara before answering. "It's not my story to tell," he said calmly, "but it is my place to clear confusion." Clara felt her heart beat faster. She remembered Elijah from years ago. He had helped her father during difficult times. He had delivered supplies quietly when money was short. He was not someone who spoke without reason. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I received a letter from Clara saying she was coming to the city. She wrote about building a future. I thought that future included me." Marcus shook his head. "She told me she needed time, but that she cared about what we had. I believed that meant she would return." Clara looked from one to the other. "I never promised either of you that." Her voice was steady, but there was sadness in it. Elijah reached into the inside pocket of his worn jacket. Slowly, he pulled out an old envelope. The paper was slightly yellowed with age, the edges soft from time. The crowd leaned closer. "I found this 3 years ago," Elijah said. Daniel frowned. "Found what? A letter that never reached where it was meant to go?" Clara's breath caught. "What?" Elijah nodded gently. "The morning you left town, you handed 2 letters to the station clerk. He planned to deliver them. But that same afternoon, there was a heavy storm. The office roof leaked. Papers were moved in a hurry. This one slipped behind a cabinet. He held up the envelope carefully. I was helping repair the office weeks later when I found it." Daniel stepped closer. "And you kept it?" Elijah's voice remained calm. "I opened it only to see who it belonged to. Once I realized what it was, I waited for the right time." Marcus looked confused. "Why didn't you give it to one of us?" "Because it wasn't addressed to either of you," Elijah said quietly. The words landed like a stone dropping into still water. "It was addressed to the town," she whispered. "I remember now." After writing to Daniel and Marcus, she felt something was still unfinished, so she wrote another message, explaining clearly that she was leaving to support her family and find her own strength. She wrote that she cared for both men but could not belong to anyone until she understood herself. She had asked the clerk to post it on the town bulletin board so there would be no confusion. But the letter had never been seen. Elijah carefully unfolded the paper and handed it to Clara. "I believe this belongs to you." Clara hesitated before taking it. Her fingers trembled slightly as she recognized her own handwriting. The ink had faded a little, but the words were still clear. She read silently at first. Then, after a long pause, she looked up. "I wrote that I wasn't choosing anyone," she said softly. "I wrote that I needed time. I wrote that if either of you truly cared for me, you would let me grow without pressure." His earlier certainty began to crack. Marcus shifted his weight, staring at the wooden boards beneath his boots. Clara continued, her voice gaining strength. "I never said I was following you, Daniel. I never said I was returning for you, Marcus. I said I hoped we could speak honestly when the time was right." The crowd remained silent, respecting the moment. Daniel exhaled slowly. "I assumed," he admitted, "when I heard you were in the city, I thought it meant you believed in my plan. And I thought your silence meant you were waiting for the right moment to come home to me." Clara folded the letter carefully. "My silence meant I was working. I was trying to keep my family's shop alive. I was trying to become someone stronger." Elijah nodded once. "People often hear what matches their own hopes," he said. "Not always what is truly said." Daniel looked at Clara with new understanding. "Why didn't you write again more clearly?" "I thought I had," she replied. "And when I didn't hear strong questions from either of you, I believed you understood." Marcus looked up. "I didn't want to push you. I thought giving you space was the right thing," Daniel added quietly. "And I didn't want to seem unsure, so I spoke confidently about something I never confirmed." Clara felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and calm. For 3 years, invisible expectations had been building around her. Now those expectations were finally being examined. Elijah stepped back slightly, giving them room. His role was not to control the conversation, but to guide it toward truth. The late afternoon sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the depot. The long shadows seemed to stretch toward the tracks, as if even time itself was leaning in to listen. Clara took a slow breath. "I did care about both of you," she said honestly. "But caring about someone does not mean I owe them my future." The pride in his posture softened. "I should have written to ask directly instead of assuming." Marcus gave a small, regretful smile. "And I should have spoken instead of just waiting. The tension that had filled the platform earlier began to fade. In its place came something quieter but stronger, understanding. Elijah adjusted his hat. "Now that the truth is clear," he said gently, "the rest is up to her. She already has someone waiting." She understood now what he had meant. For years, she had been working, saving, learning, growing. She had been waiting to return not as the same unsure girl, but as a woman who could stand firmly on her own choices. The person waiting had never been Daniel. It had never been Marcus. It had been her future self. Daniel took a step back, giving her space. "I owe you an apology," he said sincerely. "I spoke about you as if you were already part of my plans." Marcus nodded in agreement, "and I placed quiet expectations on you without asking what you truly wanted. Thank you for saying that." The crowd slowly began to disperse, sensing that the storm had passed. Conversations resumed in softer tones. Life at the depot returned to its normal rhythm. But something had changed. Daniel no longer stood with the confidence of ownership. Marcus no longer stood with silent hope alone. Both now stood simply as men who needed to earn trust again, if they wanted it. Clara picked up her suitcase once more. The weight felt lighter than before. Elijah tipped his hat toward her. "Welcome home," he said. She smiled gently. "Thank you." As she walked away from the platform, Daniel and Marcus did not follow immediately. They remained standing side by side, both thinking about how easily assumptions can grow when words are not clear. And for the first time since her train had arrived, Clara felt peace. The truth had finally reached the station, and now whatever came next would be chosen, not claimed. The evening light slowly covered the town in soft gold as Clara walked away from the depot. The wooden boards creaked under her steps, and the sound felt familiar. For the first time since arriving, she did not feel pulled in two different directions. The truth had been spoken. The confusion had been cleared, but clearing confusion did not automatically fix everything. There were still feelings, pride, and unspoken regrets resting in the air. Daniel and Marcus stood near the platform long after Clara left. Neither of them looked at the other for a while. The earlier tension between them had changed into something quieter, something heavier. Daniel was the first to speak. "I suppose I made it sound like she was already part of my future." Marcus gave a small nod. "And I acted like waiting quietly meant she would automatically choose me." Daniel let out a slow breath. "I told people in the city that she would join me once I was ready. I never stopped to ask if she wanted that." Marcus looked toward the road where Clara had disappeared. "I told myself that being patient was enough. But patience without honest conversation is just silence." Neither man liked admitting mistakes, but the truth had made pride feel smaller. They had both built hopes without confirming reality, and now they had to face that. Across town, Clara reached her mother's small house. The door opened before she could knock. Her mother stood there with tired but loving eyes. They embraced tightly, holding each other for a long time. No words were needed at first. Inside the house, everything felt smaller than Clara remembered. The wooden table, the simple curtains, the small shelf of family photos, all of it reminded her why she had left and why she had come back. Later that evening, after unpacking her suitcase, Clara stepped outside alone. The sky had turned deep blue, and the first stars were beginning to show. She sat on the porch steps and let the quiet settle around her. Her thoughts were clear. For years she had been surviving, working long hours, sending money home, learning to stand on her own. She had not allowed herself to think deeply about romance or choosing between Daniel and Marcus. She simply did what needed to be done. Now she was back. And for the first time, she realized something important. She was not the same girl who had left. The next morning, Clara walked toward the small shop near the depot. The sign above the door still carried her father's name, though the paint had faded. The windows needed cleaning. The door hinges made a soft sound when opened. She stepped inside slowly. Dust floated in the sunlight that entered through the front window. Shelves stood half empty. The counter where her father once stood proudly now looked worn. But instead of sadness, Clara felt determination. This place was not a memory. It was an opportunity. As she stood there, Elijah appeared at the doorway. He removed his hat respectfully. "Thought I might find you here. It needs work." Elijah looked around. Most good things do. She turned to face him. "When you said I already had someone waiting, you meant me, didn't you? You left as a young woman unsure of herself. You returned, knowing your strength." "That version of you was waiting." Clara felt a quiet warmth in her chest. "I didn't understand that before. They think waiting means standing still. Sometimes it means growing." Later that day, word spread that Clara planned to reopen the shop. Some townspeople were surprised. Others were curious. Daniel and Marcus both heard the news separately. Daniel arrived first. He stood awkwardly in the doorway of the shop, watching Clara wipe dust from the shelves. "I heard you're staying," he said. "For now," she replied calmly. He stepped inside. "If you need help with supplies, I have contacts in the city. I could arrange better prices." Clara appreciated the offer, but she noticed something different in his tone. It was no longer confident and possessive. It was careful. "Thank you," she said. "I may take you up on that." Daniel hesitated before speaking again. "Clara, I want to say something clearly this time. I don't expect anything from you. Not promises. Not decisions. I just hope we can start fresh." She studied his face. He looked more thoughtful than before. "Starting fresh means no assumptions," she said. He nodded. Agreed. After he left, Marcus arrived carrying a small toolbox. "I thought the door hinges might need fixing," he said quietly. Clara smiled. "They do." Marcus worked carefully, tightening screws and adjusting the frame. For a while, neither of them spoke much. The silence felt different now, less filled with expectation and more with understanding. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. "I waited 3 years, thinking that was proof of my feelings. But I realize now that waiting without asking you what you wanted wasn't fair." Clara set down the cloth in her hand. "I appreciate you saying that." He gave a small, honest smile. "I don't want to pressure you. I just want to know you as you are now." That's all I can offer. Days passed, and Clara worked tirelessly on the shopping. She cleaned, repaired, reorganized, and planned. The townspeople began to stop by, some offering small help, others simply welcoming her back. Daniel sent a shipment of affordable goods, keeping his promise without expecting praise. Marcus helped repair a broken shelf, but did not linger longer than needed. Both men were learning something new, the difference between claiming and supporting. One afternoon, as Clara arranged items in the front window, she noticed her reflection in the glass. She paused and studied herself. She saw strength in her posture. She saw calm in her eyes. She saw someone who had survived difficult years and returned with purpose. She realized that for so long people had spoken about her as if she were a choice to be made, but she was not a prize. She was not an object of competition. She was a person building her own life. That evening, Clara walked to the depot alone. The platform looked peaceful. A train was scheduled to arrive soon, carrying strangers with their own stories. Elijah stood near the same wooden post as before. "Shop's coming along," he said. "Yes," Clara replied. "It feels right." "And the 2 young men?" She gave a thoughtful smile. "They're learning. And you?" "I'm choosing." Elijah raised an eyebrow slightly. "Choosing who?" She looked toward the tracks where the distant sound of a train whistle could be heard. "Myself," she answered softly. The train arrived with its usual noise and movement. New faces stepped onto the platform. Some looked excited, some looked nervous, some looked lost. Clara watched them and realized she had once looked the same way, uncertain but hopeful. Now she stood steady. Daniel approached from one side of the platform, Marcus from the other. This time, there was no argument between them. They nodded politely to each other before standing a respectful distance from Clara. No one tried to stand too close. No one spoke for her. They had finally understood something important. Love, if it was meant to grow, would grow from freedom, not pressure. As the train pulled away, Clara felt no confusion inside her heart. There was no rush to decide, no fear of losing something, no weight of expectation. The waiting had changed. Before, both men believed they were the ones waiting for her. Now they understood that she had been waiting for herself to return stronger. And as the sun lowered once again over the small town, Clara felt certain of one thing. Her future would not be something others planned for her. It would be something she built, step by steady step. Autumn arrived gently in the small town, painting the trees in warm shades of gold and orange. The air grew cooler, and the mornings carried a fresh quietness that felt full of possibility. Clara's shop had been open for nearly 2 months now, and little by little it had come back to life. At first, customers entered out of curiosity. They wanted to see if the old Whitmore shop could truly stand again. But soon they returned, because the shelves were neatly arranged, the prices were fair, and Clara greeted each person with calm kindness. She remembered names. She listened to stories. She made the place feel welcoming. The wooden floor no longer looked forgotten. The windows shined in the sunlight. A small bell above the door rang cheerfully each time someone entered. The shop was not grand, but it felt steady and honest. Daniel kept his word. He arranged for quality goods from the city at fair prices. He never used his help as a reason to stand too close or speak too boldly. When he visited, he spoke about business ideas and asked Clara's opinion instead of telling her what should be done. The confidence he once wore like armor had softened into something more thoughtful. Marcus continued to help when repairs were needed. He fixed a loose board near the entrance, repaired a broken storage crate, and even built a small display table for seasonal items. He did not stay longer than necessary, but when he smiled, it felt warm and genuine. The town noticed the change in both men. They no longer acted like rivals. They behaved like individuals trying to grow. One afternoon, as Clara arranged fresh fabric near the counter, her mother sat quietly in a rocking chair near the window. She watched her daughter carefully. "You seem lighter," her mother said gently. Clara paused and thought about it. "I feel lighter." "Is it because of one of them?" her mother asked carefully. Clara smiled softly. "No, it's because of me." Her mother nodded with understanding. "That is the best reason." As weeks passed, Clara began organizing small gatherings at the shop. She invited local women to share handmade crafts. She encouraged farmers to sell small goods on weekends. Slowly, the shop became more than a store. It became a meeting place again, just like in her father's time. One evening after closing, Clara walked toward the depot. The sky was painted with soft pink clouds as the sun lowered behind the fields. She liked visiting the platform when it was quiet. It reminded her of beginnings. Elijah was there, sitting on a bench, watching the horizon. "You've done well," he said without turning his head. Clara sat beside him. "It hasn't been easy. Nothing strong ever is," he replied. She looked at the empty tracks. "Daniel asked me to attend a business event in the city next month. He said I could expand the shop if I wanted." Elijah nodded. "And what do you think?" "I think it's a good opportunity," she said. "But not because he suggested it, because I want to see what more I can build." Elijah smiled slightly. "That's the difference." A few days later, Marcus asked if she would join him at the harvest festival in town. He spoke carefully, without expectation. "I'd enjoy your company," he said, "but only if you're free." Clara appreciated the honesty. "I'd like that," she answered. The festival night was simple and joyful. Lanterns hung from trees. Music played softly in the background. Families laughed together. Clara walked beside Marcus through the crowd. They spoke about everyday things, about the shop, about the fields, about small hopes for the coming winter. There was no pressure in the conversation, no heavy promises. Just two people learning to speak openly. Later that same week, Clara met Daniel for coffee near the edge of town. He spoke about new ideas and asked for her advice more than once. "I used to think success meant moving fast," Daniel admitted. "Now I see it also means listening." Clara noticed the change in him. Growth was not only hers. As winter slowly approached, Clara faced an important decision. The city event Daniel mentioned could help her expand the shop into nearby towns. It would require travel and careful planning. Some people in town whispered that leaving again might mean choosing Daniel's path after all. But Clara no longer felt trapped by such whispers. One quiet evening, she sat alone in the shop after closing. The soft glow of a lamp lit the shelves. She ran her fingers along the wooden counter where her father once stood. She remembered the fear she had felt years ago when she boarded that train to the city. She had been unsure, pressured by circumstances and expectations. Now, she felt different. She took out a small notebook and began writing plans. Clear, steady plans for the shop's future. She listed ideas for expanding products, supporting local workers, and building savings. She wrote goals that belonged only to her. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Daniel and Marcus, standing together. "We didn't plan this," Marcus said quickly. "We just both happened to pass by." Daniel spoke first. "We heard some talk that you might leave again for business." "Yes," Clara answered calmly. "I might," Marcus nodded. "We just wanted you to know something clearly this time." Daniel continued, "Whatever you choose, it should be for your dream." Marcus added, "Not because of either of us." There was no tension between them now, only respect. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "That means more than you know." After they left, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The waiting that once caused confusion had turned into understanding. No one stood at the depot expecting to claim her future. Instead, they stood beside her, willing to support her choices. The next morning, Clara visited the depot once more. A train was scheduled to arrive soon. The familiar whistle echoed across the fields. Elijah stood nearby as always. "You look certain," he observed. "I am," she replied. "And what have you decided?" She watched the train approach slowly along the tracks. "I'm going to the city for the business event," she said. "But I'm not leaving my home. I'm expanding it." Elijah tipped his hat. "That sounds like your choice." "It is." When the train stopped, Clara did not feel the fear she once had. She felt prepared. She would travel for a few days, learn what she could, and return stronger. The shop would remain hers. The town would remain hers. Her life would remain guided by her own voice. Daniel stood at a respectful distance and wished her success. Marcus offered to check on the shop while she was away. Neither asked for promises. As Clara stepped onto the train, she looked back at the platform. 3 years ago, she had left unsure and burdened. Now she left confident and clear. Elijah's words from months earlier echoed gently in her mind. She already has someone waiting. This time, she fully understood. The person waiting had been her stronger self. And now, she was no longer waiting. She was moving forward. When the train began to move, Clara did not feel like she was being pulled away from something. She felt like she was building something larger than before. Back on the platform, Daniel and Marcus stood side by side, not as competitors, but as men who had learned an important lesson. Love is not about claiming. It is about respecting. It is about standing beside someone as they grow. The small town returned to its normal rhythm as the train disappeared down the tracks. The depot remained steady, ready for new arrivals and new stories. And Clara Whitmore, once the girl caught between two expectations, had become a woman who chose her own path. Step by steady step, her story did not end with choosing one man over another. It continued with choosing herself first, and in doing so she made space for any future built on honesty, respect, and freedom.